Good afternoon, everyone. This is Waypoint, and I'll be narrating our results for Ferrous wheel. First up, we have Blue-Eyed Rat, who did it like this. He horizontally brings in a second benzene, and then fuses into potassium for 19 weight. We need to get 20 into that carbon, so he just brings it into calcium on each of those hydrogens, fuses it in. Now the main problem here is that there's a lot of logic to move that benzene stick up and back and forth, and then here he has to drag it back down to make room for the middle one to come in, and it winds up taking a lot of time to do that. So our final time is 2314 cycles. Let's see what other people did. Binky's solution was late, but I wanted to show it off because of the method. Binky fuses into a nitrogen ring first, and then this benzene comes in, and he fuses the atoms out of order. He does this because he's fusing directly into this nitrogen ring and doesn't want to break any of the bonds. That first carbon he brings in skips over the first round of noble gases and halogens and rare earths. The second carbon does the same thing, and he intersperses hydrogens to position it properly so that those carbons that he fuses in straddle those problematic atoms that'll break bonds. It's still pretty slow, but keep that method in mind because it was very close to something very good. All you really need to do is not sit on the sinks quite so long. Juggernaut does much the same thing. This benzene comes in, and instead of that logic, we just have a bouncer come in to fuse it into that hydrogen, and then it scoots it over, fills in the blanks, and gets iron. It's pretty slow, though. 1936 cycles. What else do we have? HXK, Gesundheit, decides to go for a brute force approach. This is just a straight 19 fuses. So he's like, screw you guys, I'm fusing in 19 things into calcium, and then just dragging both the calcium and the carbon ring over to get them in. I'm pretty sure this is about the quickest you can get a brute force approach at 1931 cycles, but other people who were using a second benzene to get fused materials got it considerably faster than that. Mr. Blarney. Mr. Blarney does something very interesting. So he makes this nitrogen ring, as before, but then he fuses them into a silicon stick. This silicon stick is used to fuse in all at once to straddle all of those noble gases and keep the bonds. So then all he has to do is just fill in a few hydrogens to get it up to iron. It's faster. The main problem, however, is that moving around that silicon stick takes a lot of additional effort. Gigigal. Gigigal wins the award for most flashy solution, and you'll see why in a second. So, first, he fuses everything into a nitrogen ring. Then, he shelves the nitrogen ring over here. He brings this guy in, and he moves to fuse it into a nitrogen ring, but in the process, fuses it into a silicon ring. And then he shelves it over here and brings in another one. He fuses those two rings together and gets a scandium ring. Each one of these steps effectively straddles a group of noble gases and rare earth metals that would have broken those bonds. But now all he has to do is just fill in 5 hydrogens for each of these, and it's high enough in the metals that it won't break any bonds. It's very flashy and very creative. I was impressed. Unfortunately, it still winds up being pretty slow at about 1554 cycles. You can go quicker than this, too. Gwen's solution is where they start to look pretty similar at this point. So what we have is this guy just slams in an entire row of the benzene. 5 extra carbons, brings into calcium, fuses it right in. It's a pretty straightforward solution after that. And from here, the solutions start to look like this for the most part. Mainly, the problem here is that there's difficulty triggering the blue off of this sink after calcium, and they have to go all the way up here through this path to be able to deliver it. Nonetheless, it's still pretty fast. And we come out to 1488 cycles. Leylight optimizes that. It looks considerably different, but the effect is pretty much the same, just a little bit smoother. And it helps that instead of moving it down, he's moving everything up one. So he positions it at the bottom and then scoots it all up so that he doesn't have quite as far to go to deliver it at the very end. This winds up coming out to 1356 cycles. Now before I move on, I'm going to show you mine, which does pretty much the same thing, but somehow beats him by 1 cycle. And I have no idea why. I wish I could. But all I can really say is that I might have saved a little bit of time, bring it into the exit, but I'm not sure. It's weird. It's Me was the last of this set of solutions, and you'll see that there's sort of this mirrored path of input betas and fuses that comes in up here, similar to what I did in my own solution. The main difference is that he just optimized it a heck of a lot better than either me or Leylight. So you've pretty much seen the solution at this point. It's just organized differently and optimized better. 1323 cycles. The last 2 solutions utterly blew everything else out of the water. Spacechem did this, and watch what happens here. So he fuses it in the nitrogen ring, and then he does the same thing as those first couple solutions where he staggers those carbons to straddle the noble gas groups. Note that there's this little box out here that has a few spaces in it. It's because he's interspersing a lot of those hydrogens in the process of fusing in the row of the benzene. This winds up combining 2 steps while avoiding all of the moving the extra calcium and iron ring to the right to do the final fuse in. Everything's just already in place. It winds up shaving off quite a bit of time, and this winds up being a good 300 cycles quicker than everything else. 1029. And unfortunately for Spacechem, Tough Thought did it a little bit better. I look at this and I wonder how on earth it could possibly run faster. I'm not entirely sure what the hell I'm looking at times, but I swear it does, somehow. The general effect is the exact same, but somehow this mess of, oh dear God, just does it quicker. And not by much, either. It does it by 1,024 cycles, which is a Li of 5 cycles. That's how close this stuff gets, guys.